wait on that. Okay, I'll get my laptop then, since we have witnesses.
We do.
Okay. All right.
And walk away. So for now, can we?
I didn't really know it's.
Last week.
That was just one thing this morning. So that's what kind of maybe.
Go. Court will call 20 CR 1358, People versus LETECIA STAUCH. Record should reflect the jury is not present in the courtroom. Is there anything we need to take up outside the presence of the jury at this point in time? Prosecution?
No, Your Honor, thanks.
Defense?
Nothing from the defense.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring the jury in. Before I forget, if we have some time at the end of the day, I want to talk about Wednesday in the event we have to flex start time.
Yeah.
I think tomorrow's fine. I think Wednesday is the issue.
I think you're right.
All rise for the jury, please.
You're right on.
Thank you.
Not quite as cool.
Six was 40 left. It just walked up and down. Got warm.
Thank you. May all be seated. Court will recall 20 CR 1358, People versus LETECIA STAUCH. It should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Prosecution, call your next witness.
Your Honor, people call Sherry Holes to the stand.
Ms. Holes, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this man will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good afternoon, Ms. Holes. How are you doing?
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Sherry Holes. It's Sherrie, last of Holes, Holes.
And what is your occupation?
I'm currently employed as a forensic serologist and DNA analyst at the Colorado Springs Metro Crime Lab.
And how long have you been employed such as?
I've been employed in that role approximately 4.5 years at the CSPD Crime Lab.
And what does a forensic serologist
Stop you for
do?
just a moment.
Oh, sure.
Can you move that so that it's on its side so it doesn't block the view of those two jurors right there?
Why don't we just put it right here?
Or you can just lay it down on its side either way. Okay,
We'll just do that.
all right, go ahead.
I think I was asking you what a forensic serologist does.
Yes, a forensic serologist examines evidence for the presence of biological fluids. Specifically in our lab, we look for blood, semen, saliva, and also we examine for other potential biological evidence that may be suitable for DNA analysis.
And what kind of experience of training do you have in the field of forensic serology?
Well, my training, first of all, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences from University of California at Davis. I also have a Master's of Public Health with a specialty in Forensic Science from University of California, Berkeley. Prior to my employment in Colorado, I was employed in the same capacity for approximately 10 years. I was also a forensic DNA analyst and serologist in various crime labs in California. Most serology training actually does occur on the job. There are a few formal classes that I did take, such as microscopy of semen evidence, and mostly it was on the job training. In fact, when I came to Colorado Springs and was hired here, I spent about a year just going through a training protocol before I was deemed competent and able to begin casework.
And are you peer reviewed when you do a serology examination?
Yeah, so all the reports that I write with my results are always technically reviewed by a second qualified analyst within the lab to make sure that they agree with the conclusions that I'm offering in the report. And then there's also another level of review called administrative review before the report goes out by another second qualified analyst, serology and DNA analyst.
And approximately how many forensic serology examinations have you conducted in your career?
Oh, in my career, it's well over 1,000.
You don't keep track each time you do one and say,
I usually average about 100 cases for serology a year. So over the course of almost 15 years, yeah, it's well over 1,000.
that was a bad attempt to try. I'm sorry. Have you testified as an expert in the field of forensic serology in the past?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
I've been qualified as an expert in this area approximately 40 times previously.
And are those both here and in California?
That's correct.
At this time, we'd ask that the court qualify Ms. Holes as an expert in the field of forensic serology and allow her to render opinions in that field.
Defense?
No objection to her being qualified.
Witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
So I want to kind of focus on your role as a forensic serologist here in Colorado Springs, the Metro Crime Lab. Were you asked to conduct several forensic serological examinations?
Serological, correct, yeah.
In this particular case of the disappearance of Gannon Stout.
Yes, I was.
Could you give the jury a rundown on how you come about or how you became involved in this investigation?
So when we get a request from an agency, in this case, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, typically there's a couple of things that happen. One is they will write a cover letter with a description of the pertinent case details and some of the items of evidence that they would like examined. And then also typically there's a meeting between the submitting agency and our crime lab supervisor, our DNA technical supervisor, and they make decisions as to these are the items that we will accept and which what are the priorities on which items will be tested.
And so is that common in any criminal investigation that the investigating agency will submit a letter asking you to perform analysis on certain items of evidence?
I can't speak to how other laboratories and agencies do it, but that is what we request, just so that we have some background knowledge of. It helps us decide of the case, so that helps us decide which evidence are best going to answer the questions being posed in the case and what is most probative, in other words, offering proof in the case circumstances.
And is it often in large investigations that you may actually meet with the detectives or other investigative officers to talk about what should be tested and why and that kind of thing?
Yes, definitely they try to do meetings before the first request comes in, but often in a large investigation, there can be several meetings that occur over time as more investigative details come to light or more questions are being answered in the case. And that is what happened in this particular case.
Can you describe that for the jury? Why did that happen in this particular case?
I was not involved in the actual meetings that were occurring. That was our crime lab manager and the DNA supervisor. But from my understanding, as more information was coming to light in the course of the investigation, more questions were being asked, more evidence was being collected on multiple different occasions, which then was coming into the lab with a request for examination.
And when you conduct your examinations, how do you get your results back to the investigating agency?
So once we have, and when I have issued a report and it's gone through the 2 layers of review, it is then released to the investigating detective, the lead detective on the case from one of our administrative staff.
And did you do several reports with regards to this investigation?
Yes, in this particular investigation, I released 7 reports.
And do you know why there were 7 different reports on, I'm assuming, 7 different dates?
Again, I think additional items were being collected, additional questions were being asked as additional evidence was being collected and during the course of the investigation. So they didn't have all of the evidence or even all of the information from that very first request. So again, as they were having more meetings with our lab management, it was decisions were being made that we need additional items tested.
And so what would be your role, just so you can explain to the jury, in the process of doing your analysis with regards to evidence in this particular case?
My role was to examine the items of evidence for the presence of mostly for the presence of blood, and then also for other potential biological material that may be there, and consolidate any swabs or cuttings that I take, as well as documentation of the evidence. Documentation is done through photography and from note-taking of my observations of the evidence. And then any samples that I deem would be suitable to go on for DNA analysis, I'm then consolidating into what we call a DNA packet. DNA packet is just an envelope that has numerous tubes that I've prepared. The tubes have little pieces of cuttings or little swabs from the various items of evidence. Then that will go forward to the next step, which is the DNA analysis.
And with regards to this particular investigation, you indicated earlier that you may have been looking for blood or the presumptive presence of blood in these types of items. How would that impact your DNA packet, or whether or not you created a DNA packet with regards to what the results of your blood test was?
So when I am looking for blood, that's always starts with a visual exam. If I see staining that is consistent with visually looks like blood, we then do a chemical color test. It's a presumptive test for blood, meaning it's not a confirmatory test for blood, but it does indicate the presence of that. If I have a stain area that looks like blood, reacts to that chemical presumptive test, I typically will take a small cutting or a swabbing of that stain, trying to preserve additional stain, not take the whole sample when I can. And then that would go into a test tube. That test tube then goes into the DNA packet. I also do what we call trace swabbing, and trace swabbing is areas that may contain DNA cells or cells that have DNA. So many of our tests are so sensitive now in DNA analysis that we don't actually need to have a stain present. We can also get a DNA profile from just a very small number of just cells. Cells can be deposited just through touch or from wearing clothing, that kind of thing. So some of my serology examination is also doing trace swabbing. So areas in which I don't actually see a stain, but may be interested in DNA results from maybe through someone having touched an item per se.
Okay. And we'll get to those as we go through the individual items. Did you have several individual physical pieces of evidence that you examined and performed a serological examination on those items?
Yes, I did.
And would you also receive swabs from various areas of a residence 6627 Mandan Drive here in Colorado Springs?
Yes, I did.
And when you received all these items, were they all sealed in a protective way so that no one touched them in between the last person who opened the item?
Yes.
And rather than go through that with each item we go through, every item you looked at was sealed when you got it?
Yeah, if anything is not in a sealed condition, I note it, but I do not remember receiving any items in an unsealed manner, no.
And when you create a DNA packet, do you also seal that item and preserve it in a way so that the DNA will not be impacted?
Yes, I do. My envelope that I create that has all the little tubes from the cuttings and swabs, that gets an evidence tape seal once it's ready to go forward, and it's stored frozen for further analysis.
And is that why we don't admit them here in court, because they need to stay in the freezer, that kind of thing, to preserve that DNA?
Yeah, they are best maintained in a frozen manner, and literally it's just an envelope with the tubes inside. So it's best just not to bring it to court at all.
So to your right are a series of exhibits. And I'd like to go through these one by one, as painfully as that sounds, but I think we can go through it fairly quickly. The first exhibit that you'll see in that box on that table is Exhibit 182. Could you pull that out and tell us what that is?
Yes. This is labeled as the toothbrush belonging to Gannon Stout.
And do you need to open that to see that that's the toothbrush in there?
I can see it from the bottom. It's been partially opened.
Okay. And when you received that, was it sealed, of course?
Yes, it was.
What did you do with that particular toothbrush?
This toothbrush was submitted as a possible secondary reference standard when we need to make DNA comparisons. We need a reference standard or a known sample from an individual. This was submitted as a possible secondary reference. Gannon was not present at the time, so they have a toothbrush, which hopefully would have his DNA on it. So I did some swabbing of the toothbrush. I also took some cuttings of the toothbrush bristles as well.
And was that done on February 8th of 2020?
The report was issued on February 8th, that work, yes.
It says that the request date was February 5th, 2020. So did you do the actual testing sometime in between those two dates?
Yes,
So Gannon's body had not been discovered yet.
correct.
So you created a DNA packet for this item?
Not just for this item, but yes, this would be one of the items, those little cuttings of the toothbrush bristles and the swabs, those would go into test tubes and be included in the DNA packet with other samples that I collected.
Now, earlier you testified that you're also a forensic DNA analyst. Is there a reason why you didn't do DNA on this particular item versus creating a packet and sending it on?
Yeah, at this point in time, I was not a qualified DNA analyst at the lab here in Colorado Springs. So my only role was to do serology examinations.
So now you can do both, right?
I'm to a certain point in my DNA analysis training that I am qualified to up to a certain step, but there's always more training to be done.
Did this item and other items go on to Donna Minogue for further DNA testing?
Yes.
And I don't know if we want to just stick that back in
Oh,
the
sure.
box, just that so it doesn't get cluttered up there. Or that works too. Okay. The next item in there is People's Exhibit 184. You could pull that out and tell us what that is.
Yes, DNA standards for Gannon's biological father.
And do you need to open that to see what's in there?
It's partially open. There's, I can take a look at this. Okay, there's just some swabs that are in here.
Are those buccal swabs from Mr. Eugene STAUCH, also Al STAUCH?
Yes, buccal swabs are swabs that are taken from the inside of the cheeks and the gum area, and those are taken as a reference standard or a known DNA standard that will be later on used for comparison purposes.
I guess while we're doing that, let's pull out 185 as well. What is People's Exhibit 185?
DNA standards for Gannon's biological mother, Landon. Okay. Yes, this also contains 2 sets of swabs.
And so those buccal swabs as well from Gannon's mother?
Yes, these are buccal swabs also collected as reference standards from Gannon's mother.
Now, we're doing this together, but I'm assuming when you conduct the test, you're doing things individually, right? You're not mixing and matching items of evidence?
So we have yes, that's correct. We have a very set process on how we examine items of evidence in the lab. We always, before we even start any examination, we do a thorough cleaning of our workspace using bleach. We know that DNA, because it's so sensitive, our testing procedures are so sensitive, they are prone to contamination. So we have to be very careful, make sure we don't leave our own DNA on any evidence. So that involves wearing protective face coverings and hand coverings and gloves, hair coverings as well. And then we also want to make sure that there's no contaminating DNA on our work surfaces. So those are always bleached down in between every single item of evidence. We always lay out a fresh piece of like white butcher paper, so the evidence actually doesn't even touch any of our work surfaces. Any of our implements are cleaned as well. And then we always look at the order in which we look at items of evidence is also important. We try to look at evidence items that may have potentially low amounts of DNA before we would look at evidence items that have high amounts of DNA, something that would be very bloody, would have an expected high amount of DNA. We wouldn't want that to contaminate our work surfaces at all. So the order in which we examine is important. And then lastly, we always look at reference samples last, after looking at all the other evidence items.
And with regards to People's Exhibit 184 and 185, what did you do exactly to create a DNA packet for those two buccal swabs?
So the buccal swabs, individually, of course, one by one, examining those. My role was just to take a portion of one of the buccal swabs. I essentially just, it's like a long Q-tip, like a Q-tip head with a long stick. That's what the swab is. And I just take a sterile scalpel and I just portion off one part of the swab. That goes into a sterile tube, which is then labeled with the associated barcode number that we've given it. Then that tube is that I've created goes into the DNA packet.
And I'm referencing your February 8th, 2020 report, if you need to refresh your recollection. But do you recall looking at a piece of tan carpet that was rolled up inside of another piece of carpet that was found in the storage room at 6627 Mandan Drive?
Yes.
And what were you looking at in regards to that carpet?
So I was looking for the possible presence of blood.
Did you see with your eye the presence of possible blood?
I did.
And what did you do upon that?
So once I visually see staining that looks like it may be blood, I then do the chemical color presumptive test, which was positive for the presence of blood on the carpet. And then I do, actually on the back of that rolled up piece of carpet, I then swabbed a portion of that potential blood staining so that portion of that swab can go in the test tube and then into the DNA packet for further analysis.
And do you have People's Exhibit 386 there
I do.
next in the list?
Yes.
What is People's Exhibit 386?
Let's see. This is 3 sets of possible blood swabs.
And what are those blood swabs from? Does it indicate on the
It
envelope?
does, yes. These were identified using placards A, B, and C, collected from the stairs and the floor of the garage.
And so, what are these? Are these Q-tips or am I being too general here?
It's very much like a Q-tip. Their swabs come in sterile packaging. So typically there's a sterile wrapper, and within there are 2 swabs that they are, when our crime scene investigators are collecting these, they would open up the sterile packaging, take out these 2 swabs, which look like a Q-tip, but they have long wooden sticks. And then once they're finished swabbing these particular areas, they go back into the individual swab wrappers, and that's how I receive them. This one has 3 sets, meaning there'd be 3 separate collections then contained within this outer envelope.
Are the 3 sets labeled in a particular way?
I'm gonna need to refer to my notes. Let's see.
Now, page 2 of 4 of your
Oh, thank
report.
Is that on my report or my notes?
It's in your report.
Okay, I'm just gonna look at my notes. Okay, let's see. Okay, so they actually, inside the outer envelope, inside there was 3 smaller tape-sealed manila envelopes. And each of those were labeled with either an A or a B or a C to indicate the placards that they had used while they were collecting the evidence.
And does it say where these placards were located within the residence?
Let's see.
Was it in the garage?
Yeah, so the outermost barcode label, which they put on here, says from the stairs and the floor of the garage.
So with regards to these placards, if the jury wanted to, they can look at photographs and go to the garage and look for placards A, B, and C, and that would reference the swabs that we're talking about?
Yes, correct.
So what did you find with regards to placards A, B, and C, or at least the swabs from those areas in the garage?
So each of those swabs did show kind of a reddish discoloration, each set, A, B, and C. And I did my chemical presumptive testing for each set of placards A, B, C, and all were presumptive positive for blood.
And did those get forwarded on for DNA analysis?
Yes, portions of those swabs were then cut and placed into test tubes, forwarded for DNA analysis.
Okay. I believe the next one, the Honor, if I may, have permission to look for an exhibit.
Might have to narrow it down a little bit more than that. That's okay.
Well, People's 451 is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Let me show you people's, that's in admitted evidence 451. Do you recognize this item?
I do.
Okay. Do you need to look at that further?
Okay, I do, yes.
Okay. Obviously, 451 is a piece of carpet, right?
Yes, that was a carpet, correct. Carpet 1 is how they designated that one.
So now while I'm up here, what did you find in people's exhibit 451?
That piece of carpet, there was staining observed on both sides of the carpet. That was presumptive positive for blood.
And did you forward that on for DNA analysis?
I did, yes. Or not the whole carpet. I did take samples from the carpet.
Now, people's exhibit 503, in your report, it's labeled as 6839 SW2-01 period 01. Another piece of carpet. Do you recall seeing that?
So let's see. Carpet 1 is that item number that you just described. There was a second carpet, carpet 2, that was 6839 SW2-04.01. Is that, or is it a different exhibit that you're referencing?
Yeah, I think 451 was a different one. So let me show you that again so you can look at the lab number.
Okay. So far. Okay, so that's the -01. That's for carpet 1,
Okay.
right? Okay.
Is the next one carpet 2 then?
The next one should be carpet 2.
So same thing with carpet 2. What did you find on carpet 2, which is people's exhibit 503?
Yes, carpet 2 also had visible staining and also reacted positive to the presumptive test for blood.
And did you also look at the foam padding associated with people's exhibit 503?
Yes, I did.
And what did you find in the foam padding of people's exhibit 503?
Also, foam padding had visible staining and was positive for the presumptive presence of blood.
The next exhibit in the box to your right should be people's exhibit 512. Can you pull that out?
Yes.
What do you see in people's exhibit 512?
This one is labeled as the electrical outlet cover with possible blood. And it says collected from southeast corner of southeast room, child room of basement.
And what did you find after, did you conduct a presumptive test for blood on that item?
I did. I noted some visible staining on the electric outlet cover. I did the presumptive test for blood, which was positive.
And did you perform a DNA kit for that item?
Well, I did do some swabbing of the stained area that could then go on for DNA analysis, yes.
And so do you do that, for instance, if it's a physical piece of item, that may have blood on it, would you actually swab the blood versus a CSI at the scene swabbing like the garage floor that we already talked about?
Yeah, typically when we train CSIs or law enforcement officers, we always suggest that if they can collect the item and bring it into the lab so the serologist can examine it, that's the best practice. If it's an item that is just not movable, such as a garage floor or is just too unwieldy to collect, then they do some sampling as well. But we always prefer on anything that can be packaged and brought into the lab, we always would prefer to examine it ourselves and do all of the documentation and collection in the lab.
Is the swabbing the same process though? Same, keep referring to it as a Q-tip. Is there something else I should refer it to?
Yeah, swab or Q-tip, it's the same. We always have these, so we use the sterile package swabs that we open up, and then I label the swab wrapper as to what I'm going to be, what the barcode number is associated with it, and I swab it, I let it dry. Once it's dry, I can then take a portion of the swab, put it into a sterile test tube for DNA analysis.
We can put that back, and then the next item should be Pupils Exhibit 516. That,
Yes.
and what is People's Exhibit 516?
This is labeled as possible blood swabs collected from electrical socket in southeast corner of southeast room, child room, basement.
And do you know if that socket is related to People's Exhibit 512, the item we just looked at?
Yes, I believe that they did actually, I'm not sure who actually collected the swab, but that it was swabbed prior to being collected and submitted to the lab.
And what did you do with that particular exhibit?
This particular exhibit, I just noted some coloration on the swab, and then, let's see, tested it with the presumptive test for blood, which was positive. I then took a portion of the swab, cut portion of the swab, put it into the test tube for DNA analysis.
The next time I want to talk to you about is in your report, it's People's Exhibit 504, but in your report you label as Carpet 2. Does that refresh your recollection a little bit about the three different carpets you looked at?
Okay, yes. So there was a carpet 1, there was a carpet 2, and then there was an unlabeled carpet rug. So,
Right.
Okay,
Right.
yes.
So what did you find with regards to People's Exhibit 504, what you have labeled as Carpet 2 in your report?
Again, visible staining was present on the carpet. The chemical presumptive test for blood was positive.
And did you forward that on for DNA analysis?
Yes, samples were taken on carpet 2 from the back side of the carpet. Swabs were taken, cuttings were taken, and even some of the stained fibers were taken, all to be forwarded for DNA analysis.
Did you do the same for the padding that was related to Carpet 2, People's Exhibit 504?
Same process, did a visual exam, noted staining, which was presumptive positive for blood, and again, took a small cutting of the stained area that could be forwarded for DNA analysis.
And with regards to Carpet 1 and Carpet 2, do you know where this carpet came from with regards to 6627 Mandan Drive?
They were labeled as coming from the southeast room, also known as the child's room in the basement.
That been Gannon's room, or did you know?
That's my understanding, that they were from Gannon's room.
Was it your understanding that there was a large area of blood in the corner of his room underneath his bed?
Yes.
I now want to turn to your February 28th, 2020 report. And I believe the next item in the box will be People's Exhibit 371. Is that right?
That's 378.
Do you see 371 up there? Oh, I apologize. 371 is defendant's buccal swabs. Do you recall getting defendant's buccal swabs?
Let's see. Were they part of a kit? Let me take a
Well,
look.
they're currently admitted into evidence, but they're in a freezer somewhere.
So I did actually get buccal swabs. They were part of an evidence collection kit taken from LETECIA STAUCH, which had fingernail scrapings and a buccal swab. So I did portion out some of the buccal swab from LETECIA STAUCH for DNA analysis.
Okay, and that went on to Donna Minogue's analysis?
Correct, yes.
All right. So now let's go to the shoes that you have there. People's Exhibit 378. Are those the shoes you looked at?
Yes, they are.
Is that People's Exhibit 378?
Correct, yes.
Now, earlier you testified about swabbing for DNA for the presence of things that are other than blood. Did you do that with this particular item?
Yes, I did. Again, we call that trace DNA swabbing. It's in areas that we don't see staining, but we may be interested in any, say, skin cells that may be left by, in these cases, shoes, maybe someone who wore the shoes. We could potentially still get DNA from swabbing, in this case, the inside soles of the shoes.
And so can you demonstrate, I know the shoes are in plastic, but can you kind of demonstrate for the jury where you swab these particular shoes in the hopes of finding DNA for the owner of those shoes?
Sure. So for the owner, I would expect that their DNA would be on the inside soles. So I actually, for each shoe individually, these are separate swabbings, I took the swabs together and I swabbed the insole, like reaching into the shoe, and then also the back heel area. And that was done separately for the right and left shoes.
And did that get forwarded on for DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
Did you also swab any potential blood on the outside of those shoes?
Yes. On the right shoe, I did swab. It did react. The right shoe did react to the chemical presumptive test for blood on the outsole. It's on the bottom of the shoe. So I actually just swabbed the entire outsole, including all of the recessed areas of the shoe as well.
Now, when you got these shoes, were you able to visibly see blood on them or what appeared to be blood?
So I did note that they had kind of an orangish, reddish coloration. I didn't. Sometimes things can look like blood and they don't react, and other times, the blood potentially can take different colorations. Both shoes had that coloration, although the left shoe did not react to the presumptive presence of blood. So unclear if the coloration is due to potential blood staining, but the right shoe did react to the presumptive test for blood.
And what happens to blood if you put shoes in a washing machine and run the wash?
So what happens to blood? So blood obviously is going to, for the most part, be washed off, but within blood there are cells. And cells can sometimes survive washing. We do know through actual studies that have been published that some DNA can survive washing. Of course, some would be lost to the wash process, but depending on various factors such as what type of substrate or surface the DNA was deposited on, what type of wash cycle, what type of detergents, or even if bleaches were used, those are all going to impact whether or not we would get recoverable amounts of DNA from something that has gone through the wash.
When you received these shoes, did you notice anything that was consistent with them being run through a washing machine?
I actually did note for these shoes that they had a strong, what I called clean odor.
And yet you still saw some discoloration that appeared to be blood to you on these shoes?
I did note discoloration on the soles of the shoe, the outsoles, and that's where I focused my attention as far as presumptive testing for blood. And was able to find positive results on the outsole of the right shoe.
Did you also receive a swab with regards to this case, which is People's Exhibit 246? Should be in that box there. If it's not in that box, I can just ask you about
I
it.
actually found it.
Okay. What is People's Exhibit 246?
This is labeled as package of 2 swabs for woman's black and white Nike shoe. And then there's some indications on the bottom, handwritten, swabs from Nike shoes, laundry room, right shoe.
And so are those consistent with People's Exhibit 378, the Nike shoes that you just talked about?
Yeah, they actually were swabbed prior to being submitted into the lab. The outsole was swabbed.
And did you submit that on to DNA analysis?
I did. This, I believe I actually tested it for the presumptive presence of blood. I did, and that was positive. So yes, and then a portion was submitted on for DNA analysis.
You need help getting rid of some of those
No,
exhibits? or
I
you-
got it.
Next one to go to People's Exhibit. Well, before we leave 378, did you talk about all the areas you swabbed, both outside and inside of the shoe?
Let me just refer to my report. Okay, so the right shoe, I did swab the entire outsole of the right shoe that had reacted positive for the presumptive presence of blood, even in all of those little recessed areas as well. I did swab the right shoelace as well. And then I took the trace swabs that we talked about for wearer DNA on the inside sole and the inside back heel area. The left shoe, I did not get any presumptive positives. They were all negatives. So I only did those trace swabs on the insole of the left shoe.
And were those individually packaged for DNA analysis? So when Donna Minogue did her DNA analysis, she knew exactly what she was doing based on your labeling.
Yes, I always label the swab wrappers with what I'm collecting. And then also the test tubes get the same itemization as well.
And does that apply to everything where you create a DNA packet? Do you label it so Donna Minogue, who does the DNA analysis, can then say, this is the item that Sherry Holes looked at?
Yes, that's our standard practice within the lab.
I next want to turn to People's Exhibit 459. Do you have that there?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 459?
This is labeled as swabs of Blue Star presumptive positive reactions in garage and laundry room of 6627 Mandan Drive.
So what is the Blue Star? I know the jury has heard a lot about Blue Star, but what does Blue Star mean to you, and how do you treat that differently? For instance, a swab that says blood on the garage floor is A, B, and C said.
Sure. So Blue Star is another chemical presumptive test. It works in very much the same way as the chemical test I'm using in the lab. I use a different one, but it has the same process. Blue Star is used by our CSIs out at crime scenes, and it's typically used in areas in which they suspect there might be blood, or they're looking to see if there's blood, but it's really not visible to them. And they can spray this reagent onto an area. It will react. It's very, very sensitive. It will react even if an area has been cleaned, potentially. So it's chemiluminescent. Usually that's something that they do in a darkened room, and it's much like luminol. It glows, and they can take photographs of areas that are reacting. When they find a Blue Star positive area, then they swab it for us, and they submit it into the lab. But because it's already gone through a chemical presumptive test, they don't need to now repeat another chemical presumptive test. It's already reacted positive to the Blue Star. It's the same process that my test would do. So when I get something labeled as Blue Star positive, my role is typically just to, like in this case, these are swabs, just go ahead and collect a portion of the swab into a test tube and forward it on for DNA analysis.
And is that what you did with 459?
Yes.
And did you do that with everything that was labeled Blue Star, at least swabbing of the Blue Star?
When things were swabbed, yes, there were a few items, larger items that said Blue Star positive that I did still, like carpeting. I did still do a visual exam, but swabs, I just took a portion. I didn't do further chemical presumptive testing.
So with regards to People's Exhibit 518, which should be the next exhibit, did you do the same things with that particular item?
Yes, this is labeled swabs of Blue Star positive reactions from the staircase between the main level and basement of 6627 Mandan Drive. Again, my role was just to take a sample using a scalpel, take off a small portion of the swabs, put them into the test tubes.
Is that 518 you're looking at?
Yes.
And so let me, if I can approach her.
You may.
Sure.
Let's now jump to your March 17th, 2020 report. And I'm gonna hand you what's been admitted into evidence as People's Exhibit 423.
Yes.
I can just hold it for you if you like.
Okay.
Do
Yes.
you recognize that?
I do recognize the label on it. I did not package it in this packaging, but yes, I recognize this is a plastic tub and lid with possible blood.
Did you examine this item?
I did.
Do you need to open it to look at it?
No, I don't.
Do you need me to open it?
No.
All right. What did you do with People's Exhibit 423?
This item was examined for the possible presence of blood, so I did do some visual examinations. That's how we always start all of our serology. And I did note that there was some red-brown staining on one short end of this plastic tub, on the tub and on the lid. I then did my chemical presumptive tests for blood, which were positive. I then took a number of different collections, swabs of these different blood stains or potential suspected blood stains, and those were then forwarded for the DNA analysis.
Can you just generally describe where you swabbed this item and how you labeled it for DNA analysis?
Sure. I collected, one collection was swabs of a suspected blood stain on the outside lip of the lid, short end of the tub with the label, meaning there was actually a sticker label on the tub. So I was differentiating that side from the other side, which did not have a sticker label. Second collection was swabs of suspected bloodstain on outside corner of lid, short end of tub with label. The third collection was swabs of suspected bloodstain on outside lip edge and side of container, short end of tub with label. And the fourth collection was swabs of suspected bloodstain on the inside corner of the lid, short end of the tub with label.
And again, Donna Minogue would be able to know exactly what she's testing based on your labels.
Correct, yes.
You can go to your May 27th, 2020 report now. And I'll have you look at People's Exhibit 278, which should be in that box next to you there. Do you have that?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 278?
This is labeled as one package of 2 swabs from the bed located on east wall of Gannon's room.
Did you test that item for blood?
I did, yes.
And what was your results?
Presumptive positive for blood.
And did you forward that on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
Did you also conduct analysis on other swabs within that People's Exhibit 278?
This is one package of swabs. There was a separate item submitted called additional package of swabs from bed. I don't believe it's contained within this exhibit, but there was a separate item, which we have a separate barcode for, also from the bed, also positive for blood, or presumptive positive for blood.
And did that also go on to DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
How about People's Exhibit 191? What is that, by the way?
This is labeled as a Brillo scrub brush.
And what did you do with that Brillo scrub brush?
I examined it visually for the possible presence of blood. I did note some staining on the brush, and I was then able to do get the positive presumptive test for blood, and then do some collections of the staining that could go for DNA analysis.
And assuming you forwarded that on to DNA analysis?
I did, yes.
Where did you see, where did it test positive for blood on that particular item? Do you have that in your notes?
I do. This particular item tested positive on this kind of, oh, you actually can see it. It's kind of a flat type scrub brush with a handle. It tested positive on the flat surface on that back side of the brush.
And did you see any indication that this item may have been washed?
May have been washed. Let me check my notes.
You can actually look at the exhibit. Can you see where that exhibit was recovered from?
It actually does not note. Let me see the notes on this one actually is just called Brillo scrub brush. That's all that it's denoted.
That's fine. How about People's Exhibit 192? Do you have that?
I do, yes.
What is People's Exhibit 192?
This one is called a blue and white scrub brush. Okay.
Go ahead and tell us what you did with that.
So also visually examined and did note staining on this scrub brush, which was positive for the presumptive presence of blood. I then was able to collect stains from 3 separate collections. I collected from the base of the scrub brush head, between and on the bristles. Suspected blood stains were also collected from the back of the scrub brush head, and suspected blood stain was collected on the actual scrub brush bristles themselves.
And did that get forwarded on to DNA for DNA analysis?
It did, yes.
How about People's Exhibit 193?
People's Exhibit 193 is labeled as scrub brush with possible hair and carpet fiber.
What did you do with that particular exhibit?
Same process. I did a visual exam, did note some suspected blood staining, and which reacted to the chemical presumptive test for blood. I then collected possible blood stains on the back of the flat scrub brush.
Went on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Next item is People's Exhibit 417. Do you have that up there?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 417?
This is described as 3 sets of possible blood swabs, tested presumptive positive blue star, collected from basement living room carpet, pillow on north couch, and area rug.
And did you forward those 3 swabs on for DNA analysis?
Yes, these were 3 separate swabs from some blue star areas. These also were sampled, placed in the test tubes, forwarded on for DNA analysis.
People's Exhibit 519.
Okay, this item is labeled swabs of blue star presumptive positive reactions from basement. Let's see, base of stairs and southeast child's room.
And how many swabs total are in that particular exhibit?
Let's see. This particular exhibit has, let's see, 6 different collections in it.
And I'm assuming those are packaged in 6 different tubes?
So of these, let's see, are they packaged in separate tubes when I do my packaging or how I receive them?
When you receive them?
So when I receive them, they typically are in, let me just check my notes. They actually were in 6 separate tape sealed manila envelopes. And each of the envelopes then had a description of where it had been collected from.
And since these are blue star swabs, did you just prepare these for DNA analysis?
Yeah, my preparation is just to sample or cut a portion of a swab to forward it on to DNA analysis.
We can go to your June 17th report now and have you look at People's Exhibit 361.
Okay.
Well, I've got that here. If I can approach you.
You may, go ahead.
I'm going to pull out a suitcase that's been entered in evidence and People's Exhibit 361. Do you recognize this item?
I do.
You need to put some gloves on, which I
Oh,
probably should put some gloves
I
on.
have gloves. Yeah.
Because I'd like to have you demonstrate where you swab this particular item, okay?
Sure.
Eric, can the witness come out here and I'll hold
That's
this while
fine.
she does that? So, did you swab this item for blood?
I did on the inside of this.
You open this suitcase and show the jury where you swabbed it?
I noted staining in this area, this reddish brown staining, which did react to the presumptive test for blood. And this was the area that was swabbed.
You'll see staining there.
I can't.
Is that your circle that's on this suitcase?
Yeah, I circled the stain area. That's just for when I take photographs. I've also noted LMG positive. LMG is just shorthand for leukomalachite green. That's, I'm sorry, leuco, L-E-U-C-O. Okay, that's too fast. It's the chemical presumptive test that I'm using in the lab. This LMG positive means it has reacted, and then I take photographs of this stain from various angles and with a scale. And I always like to have that notation in my photographs.
Are there other areas within this suitcase that you noted and swabbed?
There are other areas that I noted. I had seen other potential stains, like for example, there's one on the lining. Actually, there's two that I have noted staining, but I've circled and said LMG negative, meaning I did do the chemical presumptive test, but it did not react. So I don't swab stains that don't react to the presumptive test.
I'll be back just afterwards.
That's fine.
Did you forward these swabs from the suitcase on for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
Did you also look at a blanket, People's Exhibit 365?
I did, yes.
Can you show you People's Exhibit 365? I think you can just use this in the plastic if you don't mind.
Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna hold it if you wouldn't mind coming.
Sure.
Can you see the areas where you swab this blue blanket? On the other side?
One on the dark blue side, it's on the light side and the dark side. Okay. Yes. So right here. Yeah, flip it, I can see it on the.
All right, I'll hold it while you point things out for the jury.
So I examined the entire blanket and I did note in this area right here. And there's kind of some reddish brown staining, which I circled, multiple different stains that did react to that presumptive test for blood. So I actually took, you can kind of see these tiny little squares. That's where I took cuttings from this. Because it's together, I was able to combine those into one test tube. And so that's the only area sampled on the blanket for DNA.
Did that test positive for blood?
It did.
Do you know whether or not this blanket was inside this suitcase when it was recovered?
Yes, I did put that in my report. Blue blanket recovered from within suitcase.
And those swabs, again, were forwarded on for DNA analysis.
Yeah, those were cuttings put into a test tube that was forwarded for DNA analysis.
Now, we don't have an exhibit that's titled Gannon's fingernails, but did you have an opportunity to examine the fingernails from autopsy from Gannon Stout?
I did, yes.
What did you do with those particular fingernails?
Just going to refer to my report and notes. Okay. So of the right hand, I received 2 entire fingernails. From the left hand, I also received 2 entire fingernails. Separately, I examined them and I did swab the undersides of the distal ends, meaning the ends furthest from, like, I guess, the knuckle. I did swab separately the right undersides and the left undersides of those fingernails. And for each case, for both the right hand and left hand, the swabs from underneath the fingernails were positive for the presumptive presence of blood.
And did you forward those on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Why did I forward or why did I swab?
Why were the fingernails that we knew came from Gannon forwarded on for DNA analysis? Do you know?
To look for the presence of possible foreign DNA, which may be on the fingernails.
I want to jump to your report dated March 17th. And do you have People's Exhibit 194 up there?
Yes.
What is People's Exhibit 194?
This is an empty plastic Heinz vinegar bottle.
And did you receive that bottle into your lab for analysis?
I did.
And what did you do with regards to that bottle?
Again, I was looking at this bottle for the possible presence of blood. I did note some faint light staining around the handle area of the bottle, which did test presumptive positive for blood. And that area was swabbed and then forwarded for DNA analysis.
Do you have People's Exhibit 435 up there? What is People's Exhibit 435?
This is People's Exhibit 679.
Okay, that's the next one.
I don't
me see.
have any more exhibits in here.
Well, let me just do it this way. Do you recall examining an Amazon box that had potential blood on it?
I do.
And was this Amazon box recovered from the storage room at 6627 Mandan Drive?
Yes.
What did you see when you got the box in your lab?
On one side of the box, there was some potential blood staining that visually looked like it could be blood. And I did do the chemical presumptive tests, which were positive for those stains on one side of the box, on the exterior side.
And did you forward those swabbings of those stains onto DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did swab the stains, and those did go on for DNA analysis.
And are they labeled in such a way that Donna Minogue would know where they came from once she got them?
Yes.
Okay. With regards to People's Exhibit 679, which I think you said you had up there,
Okay.
what is that and what did you do with it?
This is labeled as white bed sheet with blue sharp print and hair and fabric received from laundry basket in closet of southeast basement bedroom. This particular sheet, I did look, do my visual exam. I did note one stain that did react to the presumptive tests for blood. And I took a cutting of that suspected blood stain on the bed sheet.
Your Honor, for the record, there is a stipulation to the admission of People's Exhibit 339, which is that chart that I had up by the jury earlier.
Defense, do you agree?
This is
Okay. Exhibit 339 is admitted.
request to publish.
You may, go ahead.
Ms. Holmes, I'm going to show you Exhibit 339 first of all here. Did you help me prepare this particular exhibit?
I did.
And did Ms. Minogue also contribute in preparing this exhibit?
Yes, she did.
Could you just let the jury know what this exhibit is?
Yes, this is just a summary table of the different people's exhibit numbers with a description of the item, and we've gone through all of those today. And then for my purposes, it does have a column that lists what the serology results were as far as whether it was presumptive positive.
So for instance, where it says blue star in your column, would that be something you didn't test for blood because the blue star already illuminated there?
Correct.
And so did you contribute to the item and the serology aspect of this particular exhibit?
In preparing, yes, I confirmed with all of my reports that that is accurate. Correct.
And we'll be using this exhibit again with Ms. Minogue.
Right.
I don't have any further questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Holes? All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
We'd call Donna Minogue.
Okay.
Can I just clean up the area up here a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't know how much of that you were still gonna use here or.
Did you want help? Or?
No, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Minogue, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
All right.
Could you please state your name, spell your last for the record, and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Donna Minogue, and my last name is spelled Manogue. I'm currently a DNA analyst and serologist with the Colorado Springs Police Department Metro Crime Lab.
How long you been a DNA analyst? Analyst. Is that how you say that?
Analysis, yes. Analyst, actually.
Analyst.
Got that all wrong.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Fast.
I've been a DNA analyst since about 1999. Prior to working here at the CSPD Crime Lab, I retired from the Albuquerque Police Department Crime Lab doing the same type of job.
And how long have you been in that particular field prior to that?
I've been in the field of forensics for a little over 35 years, but in terms of serology and DNA, I would say since 1986.
What kind of training and experience do you have in that field of forensic DNA analysis?
The training experience that I have, again, is about 24 years, about close to 30 years in serology and DNA analysis, both with the Metro Crime Lab here and with the Albuquerque Police Department. Prior to this, I have experience training. I have on-the-job training by a qualified analyst in both locations because each location requires you to train in their particular procedures. It took about 2 years to train at Albuquerque Police Department because that's where I started. And it was probably about 4 to 6 months to train and come up to speed on their procedures here.
And do you have continuous training going on now every year?
I do. We are required by our accreditation board and our quality assurance standards to have at least 8 hours of training in developments in DNA, and I generally accrue about 40 to 60 hours a year.
And tell the jury a little bit about your educational background.
I have a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences I earned in 1981, and then I have a master's degree in the same field I earned in 1983. I also have continuing education beyond that, academic education, in terms of extra additional classwork that I took to help bolster my job qualifications in my prior years of employment and in my employment here.
And have you testified as an expert in the field of forensic DNA analysis in the past?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
I'm going to say approximately 30 times here in El Paso County. I've testified probably over 100 in Bernalillo County. That's New Mexico, the county I worked in. And I've testified once, actually just once in federal court in California.
At this time, we ask that the court allow Ms. Minogue to be qualified as an expert in the field of forensic DNA analysis and render opinions in that field.
Defense?
No objection, Your Honor.
The witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
The jury's heard a little bit about forensic DNA analysis, and it was from an expert from Florida.
Okay.
So can we give them the Colorado version of what forensic DNA analysis is?
Should be pretty similar. When you do forensic DNA analysis, you're looking for a transfer of body fluids from either an item to a scene to an item, person to person. So we're looking for a transfer of DNA that is contained in the cells in the body.
You say cells from our body. What kind of fluids do we get our DNA from?
You can obtain DNA profiles from almost any body fluid. Saliva and blood and semen are the most common, but you can also obtain DNA profiles from things like sweat and urine.
Blood?
Yes, did I not say blood?
I don't know.
Blood, semen, and saliva. I thought that was my first.
It's been a long day for me. I
Mhm.
apologize.
Jury said what she said.
Yeah, well, it's my fault. No question about that. I want to talk about this case, the people of the state of Colorado versus LETECIA Stout involved in this investigation.
I was, yes, in terms of doing the DNA laboratory work.
I want to talk about known profiles first. What's a known profile?
A known profile is when you obtain a sample. It can be either a blood sample or it can be a saliva sample from an individual. So you're collecting it directly from them. So you know what their DNA profile is when you analyze it and obtain the profile.
Can you just let the jury know what a DNA profile is?
A DNA profile is a graphic representation of your genetic information at the locations that we examine in our laboratory.
And so how do we obtain these known profiles in a forensic setting in a criminal case, in a criminal investigation?
They're obtained, essentially, an investigator will provide known samples and they will be submitted to evidence. And then if it's on a request that I receive, I will analyze that.
Have you received things such as buccal swabs?
Yes, I have.
And is that a common way to develop a known profile for an individual who's alive, for instance?
That is a very common type of sample, yes.
And did you receive buccal swabs in this case?
I did, yes.
We're going to talk about those later on, but I really want to talk about, at least start out talking about how you were able to develop a profile for Gannon STAUCH, especially before his body was discovered. Could you tell the jury about that?
Yes, because we had no body to source a profile from. I was provided with items that were common, thought to have been used by him. And one of the items that we obtained a profile from was from his toothbrush. And that was a male profile was developed from that.
And did you do anything to corroborate whether or not that profile actually belonged to Gannon STAUCH?
Yes, we did. We did obtained standards from the biological mother and the biological father. And then we did a parentage statistic between the two parents and the profile we found from the toothbrush to determine if it was likely that those were the parents or this was the biological child of those two individuals.
And were you able to determine that?
Yes.
And what was your determination?
The determination was that that the profile from the toothbrush could not be excluded as having originated from the biological mother's standard and the biological father's standard that I found. And the probability of finding another individual with that profile, if you will, is the probability of including him as a biological offspring of those two is 99.9999, 10 nines after the %
And what does that mean?
It's a high likelihood that these are the biological parents of the profile from the toothbrush.
Once Gannon STAUCH's body was discovered, March 17th, 2020, were you able to corroborate that finding through other materials?
I was through bone samples.
What bone samples did you get and what did you do?
I was provided with bone samples that were transferred or transported to the El Paso County Coroner's Office, and they prepared some bone sample and bone marrow sample for me because I don't have the means to break down a bone. So they provided me samples and I took a portion of those samples and the profile from the bone sample matched the profile from the toothbrush.
And was that bone sample from a femur bone that was created, or at least the DNA sample was created for you to examine from a Dr. Leon Kelly?
Correct.
He's a pathologist here in Coral Springs?
Yes.
Did you also get information with regards to what a DNA forensic analyst was doing out in Florida with regards to a rib bone belonging to Gannon STAUCH?
My understanding is that they were attempting to obtain a profile and they were putting it into like a database to determine, or as under the category of unidentified human remains. I don't know what the outcome of that entire thing was.
Did they reach out to you to confirm whether or not they had a match with regards to this rib bone that they did DNA analysis on in Florida?
We did, yes.
And was there a match with regards to what profile they obtained in Florida?
Yes. with the toothbrush sample.
Okay. And so the last item I want to talk to you about was Gannon Stouch's fingernails. Were you able to do DNA analysis on his fingernails as well?
I did perform DNA on the fingernails in an attempt to get a DNA type that would verify that a known DNA sample from him. I was not able to obtain full profiles on those samples.
Were you able to obtain enough to know whether or not there was a connection between his fingernails and the toothbrush, for instance?
Yes, I was.
And tell the jury about that. What did you find?
Well, I found a low-level DNA profile, but there was enough information to calculate a statistic on to match them to each other.
Based on everything you just talked about, is the profile that you obtained from the toothbrush in the beginning the DNA profile for Gannon Stouch?
Yes,
And is that the profile you used in your analysis of particular unknown items, particularly from 6627, Mandan Drive, and other areas with regards to the profile from Gannon Stouch?
that is the profile that I used until I obtained the bone sample profile, which was more, the toothbrush sample is what we consider a secondary standard, not knowing who the individual is, and the bone sample just verified that. But yes, I did use the toothbrush sample for comparison.
Okay. Did you also obtain some buccal swabs from the defendant, LETECIA STAUCH here, and obtain a DNA profile from those buccal swabs?
Yes, I did.
And did you also use that in your analysis when you're comparing knowns to unknowns?
Correct.
At this time, I'd like to publish People's Exhibit 339 on the TV screen, just so everyone can see it as we're talking.
From prosecution over here.
We're going to put People's Exhibit 339 up, which is a chart that's already in evidence. You may recognize it from the TV screen. Did you help contribute to making this chart?
Yes, I did.
And is this a good summary of the items that you tested with the results that you have on those particular items?
It is, yes.
I know we're giving away the answer early on this exhibit, but I think it's helpful for the jury to kind of follow us as we talk about particular things. The first item up there is Exhibit 386, which are swabs from the garage, placards A, B, and C. Do you recall that?
Yes.
When you get those items, what did you do and how did you do your DNA analysis on those particular items?
Well, the swabs were already prepared for me during the serology examination. So what I end up with for the DNA examination is essentially an envelope of tubes with a corresponding number to them, and then I match them back up when I write the report. So I just simply did DNA analysis on these swabs.
What did you find with regards to the swab from placard A?
The swab from placard A, the major profile matched Gannon Stouch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And when you say major profile, why do you describe it as a major profile?
Because in that particular sample, I had a mixture of more than one individual, and I was able to parse out a major contributor to that according to our standardized operating procedures. I was able to pull out a major profile, and that major profile matched Gannon Stouch.
And do you have any standards on how you determine whether or not a mixture you can determine a major profile? How many contributors need to be in there for you to do that analysis?
In order to pull out a major profile, I have to follow our standard operating procedure, which is written up. It's called a mixture interpretation policy. And essentially, the major contributor has to be 2.5 to 3 times higher than the other contributors in that mixture. So by following my standard operating procedure, I was able to pull out a major profile.
How many contributors were in this mixture with regards to black?
I would have to check my report for that.
Sure, that would refresh your recollection.
Yes.
Top of page.
From
Yeah.
swab A, I had a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male. That major profile, the major male profile matched Gannon Stouch.
And we know this is at least presumptively blood. Is blood a very enriched item that has DNA in it?
It's a very rich source of DNA, yes.
Is it common, for instance, when you're swabbing a garage floor or for the instance, this podium, you might find several different profiles on that.
You could, yes.
Is the fact that it may be blood, would that contribute to Gannon being the major profile in this two-person mixture?
I can't say that the DNA, I can only tell you that because it was presumptively positive for blood, we know there's a good indication that there's blood in here, but I can only tell you that the major profile is attributable to Gannon STAUCH.
What about placard B?
Placard B, that was also a mixture of two contributors, one of which was male, and the major male profile matched Gannon STAUCH at, again, estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And so when the jury has this chart back in deliberations, People's Exhibit 339, where it says major profile matches Gannon, is that always going to be a mixture?
Not necessarily. Major, yes. When you hear the term major, that means that the DNA profile was a mixture, but that a major was able to be parsed out of that.
Whereas we get to placard C where it says matches Gannon. Tell us about placard C.
Placard C was a single source male profile, and that profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And so when there's a single source profile with People's Exhibit 339, indicate that item matches Gannon,
Correct.
just so we're clear. So mixtures, you'll see the word major profile.
Yes,
Source, you'll just see match.
correct.
Okay. You've thrown out the probability. You said 1 in 3.4 octillion. Is that what you said?
Correct.
What does that mean? What does that mean to this jury?
An octillion is a 3, for instance, we just rounded off to 3 octillion. That's a 3 followed by 27 zeros.
And why do we do that?
It's to give you an indication of the uniqueness of the profile, how often each of the alleles occur in the general population.
And so is it also to confirm that that is in fact Gannon's blood in placard C on the garage floor?
We don't provide source attribution. We don't say this profile originates from. We provide you with the fact that it's a match and the statistic that gives you an indication of the uniqueness of the profile.
I hate when lawyers ask you that, don't you?
Yes.
I won't ask you again. Okay. Let's go to People's Exhibit 503, which is labeled Carpet 1 from Gannon's room. What did you do with that and what did you find?
Again, this was in a tube already prepared for me, and it was extracted or examined. It was analyzed for the DNA profile. And that's 506, you said, or 503?
It's People's Exhibit 503, so it would be in your report.
Cutting from
It'd be
the top of the carpet?
Yep, right.
Yes, that cutting from the top of the carpet was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And did you also do a DNA analysis on the padding, or at least a cutting from the padding with regards to that same carpet?
The cutting from the padding was the same result, a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
We can go now to People's Exhibit 503, which is labeled there on 339 as face of outlet cover for Gannon's room. Did you recall getting a cutting or a DNA kit with regards to that item?
This was a swab, and that's 512?
People's Exhibit 512, yes.
Yes, I thought you said 503. These were swabs of a stain from the face of the outlet cover and the inside edge of the plug window. And I analyzed one of the samples that was prepared in a tube for me. And that was a mixture of two contributors, at least one of which is male. The major male profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
So this is another two-person mixture. How do you know at least one is male? What do you do to determine?
There are 3 areas on the DNA, on our DNA graphic printout that tells us if there's a male present. One is actually location on the Y chromosome. The other is the sex chromosomes, the X and Y. If I see a Y, I know there's a male. And there's also another area on the Y chromosome that's present if a male is present.
And the next item on 339 is People's Exhibit 516, which is a swab of the electrical socket in Gannon's room. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a single source male profile that matched GANNON-STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And then People's Exhibit 504 is carpet 2 from Gannon's room. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a single source male profile that matched GANNON-STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
Is that as high as you can go as far as the frequency?
No,
You can go higher than that. Huh?
yes.
How high can you go?
It depends on what the alleles are because it's based on the frequency of occurrence of a particular allele.
That makes so much sense to me.
It's based on the DNA profile. If people have rare DNA profiles, because sometimes we do, like they'll have a rare reading at a location, so the frequency of occurrence of that is less, which makes the statistic higher.
Okay. The padding, I'm assuming, is the same for carpet 2?
Yes, the padding is the same, a single source male profile that matched GANNON-STAUCH with a frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
Now, the next item is People's Exhibit 332, if I may approach, Your Honor.
You may, go ahead.
With regards to People's Exhibit 332, did you actually do the serology on this item as well?
I did the serology on this, yes.
I'm going to hand it to you in just a second. Show you the bag first.
Okay. I recognize it because I recognize the barcode label that's on there and my initials and date when I resealed it is on there as well.
Now I'll show you the board.
Yes,
Does it show here where you did your serological examination?
yes.
Did I say that right?
Serological.
I'm doing the best I can.
That's your fine.
All right, if permission to publish to the jury.
You may, go ahead.
And if you wouldn't mind stepping out and just showing the jury where you took your swabs or what you did with regards to this board.
The first thing I did is I noted possible blood staining. We call it red-brown staining until we identify it as presumptively positive for blood. So I've got an area marked here that is dark red-brown staining. I've also got a lot of little dots located that I did not test these dots because they're too small and I was afraid I was going to consume them. Thought is if we're going to process them for DNA, we need to take them straight to DNA without any processing. So this one here was positive for the presumptive presence of blood. And then at a later time, I swabbed these two areas because they fluoresced with using an alternate light source. So I took a swab from here, a swab from here, a swab from here, and then I swabbed the edges of the board, wondering if anybody had handled the board. So I took 4 samples total.
While we're up here, with regards to 339, we see 332 on the board. You said it's presumptive positive for blood. What swab are we talking about that actually matches Gannon?
That is this large stain here.
Did you find anything with regards to your other swabs?
I did. I have a feeling I have to go review my report.
That's fine. We can put this down and have you do that.
From the swabs from the edges of the board that I was looking for if somebody had handled it, it was a mixture of, it's a partial profile, which means I don't have all the information on the DNA profile. And it's a mixture of at least 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. And the profile was not suitable for comparison because it was too low level.
And why is it that you did the serology on this particular board and the DNA analysis?
It was the weekend and I was the only one available.
Was there some urgency with this particular exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. And you did it quickly and to get it back to the sheriff's office?
Yes.
The next item we see on 339 is People's Exhibit 378, Nike shoes from Washer. Do you see that?
Yes,
Now, you didn't actually get the shoes, but did you get swabs that were related to that shoe?
I did. I got swabs that Sherry Holes, the serologist, collected. She did the presumptive testing and collected, and I did the DNA analysis.
Let's talk about the swabs of the outsole of the right Nike shoe. What did you find there?
The swabs from the outsole of the right Nike shoe matched, it was a single source male profile that matched GANNON STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
What happens to DNA when you place items in a washing machine and wash them?
It depends on the nature of the stain. It depends on a lot of things. It also depends on how heavy the deposit is. Some of the DNA can be washed off. Sometimes all of the DNA can be washed off.
It just depends on what happens, right? And with these particular shoes, did you see anything that may have diluted the DNA profile, or can you even?
I didn't see the shoes, so I don't know.
Did you give a statistical analysis with regards to the swabs of the outsole of the right Nike shoe?
Yes, that was an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
Let's go to swabs of the bottom sole of right Nike shoe. What did you see there?
That was a single source male profile that matched GANNON STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item says swabs of inside sole of Nike shoe. What did you find with regards to that particular swab?
That was a mixture again, and I was able to parse out a major profile, and the major profile matched LETECIA STAUCH with an estimated, or at least it matched at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 28 billion.
And do you understand why Sherry Holes would swab the inside of the sole of the Nike shoes?
Yes.
What was that for?
For potential wearer.
And do you know how many contributors there were to this particular mixture?
I can check. From the interior, is this the left shoe? Yeah, the left shoe. It was a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male.
We can scroll down now, please, on 339. One more, please, up. So now we're on the swabs of the inside sole of the right Nike shoe. What did you find there?
The swabs from the inside sole of the right Nike shoe is a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male. The major profile matched LETECIA STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 730 septillion.
Do you know what kind of body fluids or what kind of cells we're looking at with regards to these 2 swabs of the inside of the Nike shoe?
You're looking mostly for skin cells that have kind of rubbed off or fallen off over the course of time.
Would sweat be a good contributor to that?
Well, sweat can contain skin cells in it, but sweat is actually a liquid. And if there are cells in the liquid, then you're obtaining a DNA profile from the actual cells, not from the liquid.
The next item we see on People's Exhibit 339 is People's Exhibit 459, which is swabs from base of box and garage south of boards. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a partial single source profile that matched GANNON STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 87 quadrillion.
And what does partial single source profile mean?
Partial means that I'm only seeing evidence of one person in this particular DNA sample, but I'm not able to, the technology is not able to detect some of the locations because it's just a low level of DNA. I don't have enough DNA.
And so for the jury's and my benefit question, you've got the profile from the toothbrush, Gannon's profile.
Yes.
You've got a profile from the swabs of this box in the garage.
Yes.
One profile has all are they called alleles?
Loci.
Loci.
Alleles, so loci would be better. It's like the locations on the DNA.
The unknown may not have all the same locations, but enough for you to call it a match.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yes.
We can now go to 518, which is swabs base of stairs and garage under cord. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you test that for DNA analysis?
I did, and I obtained a profile that was a mixture of two contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.8 quintillion.
We're just gonna go down the list. People's Exhibit 190 or 278. Do you see that?
Yes.
Swabs from Gannon's bed, which was presumptively positive for blood. What did you find there?
The swab from Gannon's bed was a partial profile, a single source male that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 450 sextillion.
Exhibit 192, a blue and white scrub brush head bristles.
The blue and white scrub brush was a mixture of at least two contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH at the interpretable loci with a statistic or an estimated frequency of 1 in 120 septillion.
People's Exhibit 193, quickie scrub brush backside.
That was a mixture of two contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 2.3 trillion.
Then we have 191, a red and white Brillo scrub brush top flat surface. What did you find with regards to that?
That I obtained only a partial DNA profile that was not suitable for comparison, but there was one male. It's a profile of at least one male.
Was that a mixture or was it a single source?
My conclusion was at least one male, so we're thinking it could possibly be two, but thinking it's one.
And could that be impacted with regards to that particular item if it had been washed in a dishwasher? Would that impact the DNA that may be on it?
Yes.
Is that obvious why that might happen?
Well, a dishwasher obviously washes dishes like a washing machine, but contained in the soap and that whatever additives you put in the dishwasher, there's bleach in that soap, and that can break down the DNA.
The next item we see on 393 is People's Exhibit 361, Peak suitcase from South Carolina, mesh lining inside. What did you find there?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
How about 365, the blanket from the suitcase that was found inside?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item we have on there, it says teal couch pillow from basement. And just so we're clear, if we skip one item down where it says Blue Star swabs from pillow on north couch in basement, do you know if that's the same item?
I believe it's the same item. One was collected at the scene by the crime scene investigator, and the other was collected by Sherry Holes.
What did you find with regards to, let's just cover all three items, 417 at once, which are swabs from the Blue Star. What did you find with regards to those swabs?
One of them was from a basement area rug, and I found a mixture of two contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. The minor was attributable to an unknown individual, and I gave it a number 1.
Why did you give it a number 1?
Because when you find an unknown profile that you don't have a standard to compare it to, you just start counting. So this was the first one.
And is that common to see unknown profiles when you're talking about mixtures?
Yes,
If you don't have a known profile, you have nothing to compare.
yes.
For instance, in this particular case, did you ever get a known profile from Lena STAUCH, the 8-year-old girl that lived there?
No, I did not.
Common for people who live in the house to leave their DNA series.
Yes.
So let's go down to the next item, which is Blue Star swabs from pillow on north couch in basement. What did you find?
I believe this was one collected by the CSI because of the Blue Star identifying information. That was that DNA profile was a mixture of 3 contributors, 3 male contributors actually. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 100 septillion, and the minor was not suitable for comparison.
And the cutout carpet with burn marks?
That DNA profile was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item we see there is People's Exhibit 423, and we have 4 items there. Plastic tub from storage room, outside lip swab. And I don't want to read them all, but what did you find with regards to this plastic tub, People's Exhibit 523, swabbing that was submitted to you for DNA?
There were 4 separate swabs. First were the swabs of the stain on the outside lip of the lid, the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. I have a second one, swabs of the stain on the outside corner of the lid from the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. Then I have a swab of a stain on the outside lip edge and into the side of the container on the short end of the tub in the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. And then lastly, I have a stain on the inside corner of the lid on the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
People's Exhibit 519 looks like it's 2 more Blue Star swabs that we see on People's Exhibit 339.
Yes.
One is Blue Star swabs from storage room 4. What did you find with that one?
That was a DNA profile was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And now with regards to the Blue Star items that we see on 339, do you know what substance that is that you're testing for DNA?
It's just an area that reacted to the Blue Star reagent that they use out on the field. The Blue Star is a presumptive test for blood.
But you're just testing whatever they swab, right?
Correct.
You're basing the Blue Star on what they label that swab activity?
Correct. It was described as Blue Star positive, so we maintain that throughout the report.
The Blue Star swabs from base of stairs and basement, what did you find?
That was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matches Gannon STAUCH at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 170 septillion.
We can go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom. We should get the rest of them in. And then we have People's Exhibit 194, swab from exterior and opposite of handle, inner to bottom. What did you find?
That was a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 52 septillion, and the minor was attributable to unknown individual number 1.
Same comment as we talked about before.
Correct.
You didn't have a known profile to match to.
Correct.
People's Exhibit 435, swabs from exterior of Amazon box from storage room, 3 stains. What did you find?
For all 3 stains, they were all single source male profiles that matched Gannon STAUCH with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
So you did a test on all 3 of these different DNA samples?
Correct. And the DNA profile and the statistic is the same for all 3.
Now, you tested a lot more items than what we just displayed in People's Exhibit 339. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are these the items that you were able to identify Gannon STAUCH to or the defendant to with regards to your DNA testing?
Yes.
Are there other items that you were not able to obtain a profile to or were not able to come to a conclusion with that were not presented to this jury?
Yes, there were.
Those are my questions, Jar. Thanks.
Council approach for a moment. Cross-examination, Mr. Cook?
Thank you. Could you leave that up just for whoever the controller is over there? Hi, how
Hi.
are you? My name is Will Cook. I represent Ms. Stalk in this case. I've just got some follow-up questions for you, ma'am. Not a lot. If you could look at 194 on the chart, and for the DNA part, it says major profile matches Gannon. Do you see that? Or
Yes,
or you can turn around.
Yes.
So Mr. Young discussed this with you. So there's more than one DNA sample floating around in this sample.
There's evidence of 2 individuals in this mixture.
Okay. You fully developed the other sample or the other DNA contributor or the other profile, I guess the minor profile?
When a sample is in a test tube and I develop a profile, and I obtain the graph, this is what I get. There's no more developing portions of a profile. I develop a profile, and this one happened to be a mixture, and I have an unknown individual identified as the minor contributor.
Okay. So you can't, you're not looking at this number 194 and going, well, the major profile matches Gannon and the minor one is LETECIA STAUCH or father or mother or anything like that.
They are compared to all of the standards that I have in the case, and I was not able to say that it matched any of the standards that I had in the case, which is why the minor was identified as unknown individual number 1.
Okay. So the matches on this whole chart we just went over, the couple matches with LETECIA STAUCH involve the Nike running shoe.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Now, some of these tests or the samples were collected very on in the investigation, the winter, spring of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And some of them, like the last one up here, Exhibit 435, the Amazon box, there was no request made for the DNA testing on that until maybe 2 years after this homicide, correct?
I don't know when the request, I do actually have the request here. I can tell you when the request was put in on March 28th, 2022.
Okay. I have a request date for January 27th, 2022, with the report date of March 17th to 22.
Oh, my error. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're correct. It's January 27th, 2022. I was reading the due date.
Okay. So there's a 2-year difference in between the early samples that were taken to the final ones that were taken and ultimately DNA tested, correct?
I don't know when the boxes were submitted originally to evidence
Okay.
or the items on this particular report. They may have been in evidence the whole time, and we were just asked to go back and examine these as well. I can't answer that.
Okay. I think that is probably it. Just a second. As one of your, who were the standards you were using? You had LETECIA STAUCH,
Yes.
Gannon,
Yes.
Gannon's father,
Yes.
Gannon's mother,
Correct.
Gannon's sister, Lena.
No, I did not have that standard.
You didn't have Lena?
No.
Okay. Did you have a Harley Hunt?
No.
Who, do you know who Harley Hunt was?
No.
You didn't know that that was LETECIA's daughter that was living in the house?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Redirect.
No, thank you.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Minogue? Doesn't look like it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Minogue, you can go ahead and step
Okay,
down. I'm
thank
sorry,
you.
ma'am.
That's right.
together there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are again in the same position that we were earlier today, and that is that we do not have any other witnesses to fill the day. We anticipate, however, that the witnesses will be here tomorrow. They are traveling. So if I can have everyone back in the morning at the same place, same time, we should be able to start on time at 9 o'clock. Again, don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't do your own independent research about any aspect of this case. Don't go looking up what septillion and quadrillion and all of that stuff means. I know everybody wants to get home and do that. You simply can't. So we'll see everybody tomorrow at the regular time. All rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. Record should reflect the jury has left the courtroom. Since we have this time, I want to talk a little bit about potential Wednesday morning issues. Are your people flying in today, tomorrow, or what?
Hey, Judge.
Okay.
Yep.
So that part, the weather should not impact their travel here. Wednesday morning, if we have a 2-hour delay, my thought would be that we start at 10:30. That will give us time to get the jury back at 10 o'clock. And then give us time to get in place by 10:30. I spoke with Court and Transport over the lunch hour to see what impact it is on their operations, and they said it doesn't matter. They just bring everybody over at the same time. They just hold them until everybody gets here.
Okay.
So who are we anticipating potentially on Wednesday?
On Wednesday, good question. Yeah, I think it's just Dr. Torres, Judge, but let me make sure.
And is she coming up from Pueblo?
I think she actually lives here.
Okay. I think storm track is supposed to be more north, so I think coming up from Pueblo is not as much of an issue, but we'll deal with it if we need to, I suppose.
Yeah, but so we actually have 2 witnesses slated for potentially on Wednesday, depending, of course, on how everybody
Okay.
goes for timing wise. Both of them are local, so we should have no trouble with that.
Okay, all right. All right, so we'll just keep an eye on the weather then and see where we are come Wednesday morning and hope for the best. And I also don't know what the impact will be on potential jurors here either. So we'll just have to deal with that. So, okay.
All right.
Anything else from the prosecution?
Not that I can think of, Judge.
Defense?
Well, I think Mr. Young.
Oh,
has something.
Mr. Young?
You did get the packet that we sent you of jury instructions? Because I know I sent them to defense as well, just.
Or like when?
It was
I-
when the trial started.
Yes, I do. I thought if you meant in the last day or so, the answer would be no. But I do have the jury instructions that you sent, was about a few days before we started, I think it was, or the week before, something like that. Okay. All right. Okay. Defense have anything else?
No, you.
Okay. All right. We'll see everybody tomorrow morning. Thank you.